You ready for this deal, Jimbo?
Hey, fire in the hole, man.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, Cowboys of the Osage.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Cowboys of the Osage podcast, brought to you by the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum, located in historic downtown Pawhuska, Oklahoma. Hey, it's old Cody here. And as always, I have my main man with me, my old partner, Mr. Rodeo historian himself, Jimbo Snively. Morning, Jimbo.
Good morning, Cody boy. It's just another great day in Osage, man.
Hey, before we get started here, the other day we had some people stop by the museum here. They were big fans of the podcast. They said they've listened to every one of them, so we're going to send them a nice big shout out. Brett and Bree Holmberg from Centerville, South Dakota. Thanks for stopping by, y'all. We appreciate it.
Man, that's a pretty big net, don't we? South Dakota.
We got two fans stop by, Jimbo. We're the big time now.
I guess. Makes us feel good when somebody comes all the way from South Dakota to visit the museum.
For sure.
I'd like to say, too, Cody, that any of our fans that plan on visiting the museum, they'll give me a day or two heads up. I'll try to be here and give them a tour, or you can be here too, but I know you're busier than I am sometimes, and I can usually meet somebody here if they want a personal tour.
Well, you know more about the deal than I do almost, Jimbo.
I don't know about that.
Who do we got today?
Hey, Cody, you know how you always kind of wanted to be a rodeo clown?
Oh, yeah.
Grew up wanting to be a rodeo clown.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got one here today, a 38-year veteran, Gary Parli. He's been a barrel man, a bullfighter, done it all, worked the national finals. He's kind of protege of Buck LeGrand, and I'm sure he's got lots of stories. He's a rodeo coach, too. So he's done it all, but best known for his working the rodeo as like I say, a barrel man and bullfighter. But anyway, we're just glad to have him. Very welcome to the Cowboys of the Osage podcast.
Hey, I'm great to be here.
Well, we're thankful to have you. Where'd you grow up at, Gary?
Morrison, Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, they play some pretty good football over there in high school, don't they?
Yes, but
Are they still going strong over there? Or?
yeah. Of course, they moved us up from 8-man to 11-man.
Yeah, it toughened it up a little bit.
And everybody said, we wouldn't be able to do any good as 11-man. The first year we were 11-man, they won the state championship also. So, yeah, there's a bunch of good, hard-working kids over there.
They had
put the time in.
Heck of a winning streak there. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yes.
Wow. How'd you get interested in rodeo?
Well, it was kind of a weird. My English teacher, Mrs. Taylor, said you got to write a theme term paper. And she said, pick something you like. And I said, there's nothing I'm really interested in. She said, well, you like horses. And I said, well, yeah. So anyway, I went out and wrote about the quarter horses, and I went and got a bunch of quarter horse journals. And then there was all these articles about Burwell, Nebraska and Sydney, Iowa, and these rodeos, and stories about rodeo. And I got interested in it and stuff. And then kind of ironic, the first rodeo I ever entered, I was 16 years old, Pawhuska Cavalcade. And Bob Burke was a calf roper, and he was 2 or 3 years older than I was, and he needed somebody to mug for him. They had them bring him crossbred cows. And we was the youngest team here, and we placed in the first go around and made it to the finals and stuff. But Pawhuska Cavalcade Rodeo was the first one I ever entered. I think I won $10 or $15. I don't know.
I don't think they've upped the purse any since that time. From what I hear, I don't even know, but I don't think it's about winning money at that particular rodeo. It's
all about the young people, and
that's quite a tradition. Probably an honor to win it too.
Right, unbelievable.
For sure. You know who I grew up with? You know who used to live in our house, Gary?
Who's that?
And then they kicked him out of our house, and he moved in with my grandparents after that. Buddy Heaton.
Buddy Heaton. I tell you, I heard so many Buddy Heaton stories growing up. when Buck LeGrand would tell you somebody was tough and crazy, now you paid attention. and Buddy Heaton, and I got to meet him the first PRCA rodeo I worked after I got a card was Amarillo, Texas, 1967. And Buddy Heaton was there, and I didn't know who he was. And he had the big beard and stuff. And I actually only put my makeup on and got in the barrel right before the bull riding. And I was opening gates, letting the calves out of the arena before I went and put my makeup on. And he's standing there, and he said, it'd be about like one of you dumb kids to let one of them calves out. And I thought, who is this big son? I asked somebody, and they said, that's Buddy Heaton. And I go, oh, yeah, I've heard so many Buddy Heaton stories. Yeah.
Is there any of them you can repeat?
The one that I heard about the most was they said, you talk about athlete, a big man that was an athlete. They said it was unbelievable. Said he'd ride bulls and pull his own bull rope, and said Lob will ride the hair off one of them. And they said those cables that used to go around the old rodeo arenas, they said he could just get up and just and tight walk them down there. They said at Calgary one year he stole the ambulance and rolled it right in front of the bucking chutes. I don't know if that's a true story or not, but
yeah, he raised all kinds of heck up there at Calgary.
Yeah.
One time he told me, and there was proof of it because he used to give these photos out to everybody. He went to prison and he was living in a halfway house, and then he moved. He literally moved in with us for some reason, and then he moved in with my grandparents. And he told me that his old trained buffalo, he jumped the fence during some big prestigious horse race at the Calgary Stampede and won the horse race, and they crowned him the winner and everything on the buffalo. And he said the Canadian Mountie shot his buffalo and told him he's never allowed back in Canada because I think the Queen of England was actually there that day. And then on the same buffalo, he wasn't invited to the President Kenny's inauguration. He told me, he said he was not invited, but he was there and he had his buffalo there, and he jumped his buffalo in the parade, the inauguration parade, and rode him right up to him. And he said the Secret Service almost got him right there on the spot, and kneeled his buffalo right in front of him. And Kennedy had him not shoot at him, and he gave away those photos everywhere he went too. And then one of his clown acts, he told me one time, he said he was at the Houston Astrodome at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, one of the biggest rodeos in the world. Packed house. He's up in the rafters and he's telling everyone he's going to jump. And pretty soon he's got everyone convinced he's going to jump, and he throws a dummy overboard, and I think it swings over the whole crowd, and an old woman had a heart attack, he told me. So that's just a few of the Buddy Heaton stories I know firsthand from Buddy Heaton.
Wow. I've heard a lot of that. And that picture's out there on the internet of him riding the buffalo in front of John Kendi. I've seen it several times.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to be a rodeo clown so bad that he went and found his old clown barrel and gave to me, and I've since lost it, through the years, but I was a little old kid. But yeah, I got a whole bunch of interesting stories about Buddy Heaton that I probably shouldn't tell on the podcast.
Did you try riding bulls any, Gary?
Yeah, yes, I did. I in high school and college rodeos, and I went to Tonkawa College, Northern Oklahoma College, and as a freshman, and I'd entered the bull riding when I was a senior in high school there, and I got on probably 20 or 30, and it was kind of funny because the first year that I was there at Tonkawa, 1964, they asked me if I wanted to clown the rodeo, and Buck LeGrand's supposed to fight bulls there, and I was going to work with him. Well, ended up Buck couldn't make it, and Tom was there, and I was supposed to be the barrel man, but nobody had a barrel, and I didn't have one at the time, so I ended up being a bullfighter, and they was going to hold my bull till after the rodeo, and then they said, no, get somebody to put a rope on him, and you got to go here in a minute, and he bucked me off right in the gate. And of course, they put it on every paper, front page, every paper. I said, I told them I needed to re-ride, and they said, why? And I said, because I wasn't through nodding when he bucked me off. Claude Robinson was an old stock contractor and stuff. He happened to be there, and he said, son, I don't think you're ever going to make it as a bull rider. He said, but I think you're going to make a rodeo clown. I said, hey, I've been looking for an excuse to quit getting on them. So I said, that might be the reason. So I never got on another one.
You said Buck helped you get started.
Yeah, Buck. Matter of fact, he called me one day and he said, "Hey," he said, "I was driving a truck hauling hot asphalt, widening 64 highway," and he called me and "Hey," he said, "you want to go to Coffeyville?" And I didn't have a PRCA card or anything. He said, "I'm gonna put you in a barrel." And he said, "If Jiggs Butler likes you," he said, he'll hire you for the whole season, and you can go with me in 1967. I'd never been in a clown barrel before, and I said, "Shoot, yeah, I'll go." And so I go up there, Melvin Fields, a great guy and good friend of mine. And now, at that time, I just met him, and he gave up his barrel job and let me get in the barrel. And he fought bulls and stuff. And when the rodeo was over, it was kind of a funny story. I tried to jump over a bull from off the top of the barrel on the Saturday night performance, and it didn't end real well. Me on his head, and Ernest Johnson, the stock contractor, he was there, entered. Danny Lemons was standing next to him. He said, Danny told him, said, "Hey," he said, "I'm down to Burl, don't even have a PRCA card." Ernest said, "I don't think he's going to live long enough to buy one." We laughed about that story a bunch. And when the rodeo was over, Jiggs come up and he said, "I want to hire you to work my rodeos with Buck this year." And so that first year in the PRCA, 1967, I worked 21 rodeos. So
he was an interesting character too, wasn't he, Buck?
Oh yes, yes. Buck was a very interesting character, and I still think he's one of the most complete rodeo clowns that there ever was. He had the axe, he was funny, and Jiggs Butler one time said, and I heard this out of his own mouth. He said, if a rodeo contract was only good enough to hire one rodeo clown for the rodeo, I'd always have to hire Buck LeGrand because he could do it all. He'd fight bulls, he'd entertain the crowd, but he was. I mean, back in those days, you had Wick Peth that was a tremendous athlete, but he didn't even wear makeup,
Right.
and stuff. But Buck was a complete, as far as I'm concerned.
When I was a kid, Cody, growing up, it seemed like the barrel man did more than they do now. Maybe it's just because I'm watching them on TV and maybe I'm missing something. But now it just seemed like they were in the barrel, not doing much at all. But back then they'd put on a show, and they'd maybe have to turn a bull out that was just special for fighting. Might not have been one that but they'd put on a pretty good act, and I don't see that anymore.
Well, you don't see that much anymore. And like I say, when I started, there was usually just one bullfighter and a barrel man, and sometimes just one bullfighter there. But now you got three bullfighters. A lot of these bigger rodeos, and a barrel man and stuff, and the barrel man didn't really get to do much or get to say much. So
they just get those bulls out of there as quick as they can. It seems like, And so
what was the barrel made out of back in '67? How'd they make them?
The barrel that I had was one Buck LeGrand had, and it was out of steel. We told everybody it weighed 100 pounds, and finally I weighed it one day, and it weighed 160 pounds. And but then I had me aluminum one made, and I was picked as one of the 5 barrel men to work the Wrangler bullfight series as a barrel man, and I had aluminum barrel, and I could fly it to those rodeos if it weighed under 100 pounds. And I could strip it down. We used raffle mat tape on it instead of inner tubes back then. And I could get it down to 88 pounds. And so I could declare it as excess baggage. And so I could fly it, and I didn't have to, because most of those, that's all I did was just work the barrel during the Wrangler bullfight.
Boy, that was something back in the day. What about the old bull Crooked Nose?
Oh, matter of fact, it's funny you mention him, because they called me and they said, "Hey, we want you to work the barrel at Colorado Springs, the Wrangler bullfight." And I was at Monte Vista, Colorado, when I got the call that they wanted me to work it. And they paid real good and stuff, furnished us motel room, treated us really good, Wrangler did and stuff. And that was the first rodeo arena that Crooked Nose was ever in. And the dad to Crooked Nose was a bull, and I'll think of his name here in a minute, but he was there at that rodeo, and then Crooked Nose's brothers. But there's out of that the fighting bull plus some Mexican cows, and you talk about beat up. When that rodeo was over, I was black and blue places you ain't even supposed to get black and blue. And Harry Vogel come to the deal, and he said, "Guys, if the bullfighter that won this got paid $4,000, the man in the barrel needs $4,000. I've never seen anybody take that much abuse." But I mean, they was so wild and crazy, and they was running and hitting it, and it was flipping end over end. And they was, I thought they was sticking horns in the bottom of the barrel. Skipper Voss told me, he said, no, he said, that's feet. He said, they're trying to jump it and it's going in and they're running their front feet down in the bottom of it. I mean, I'm black and blue and skin up like you can't believe. But yeah, Crooked Nose, he was an unbelievable fighting bull. And I saw him at the college national finals. They had a bullfight there the year after I worked the college national finals. The next year I was there as a rodeo team coach. And Crooked Nose was there. And he hooked Miles' hair and spun him in the air. And when I got back to the hotel, that's playing it on somebody had recorded it. And they said, how many revolutions do you think Miles made in the air before he hit the ground? And we could stop it, and it's 3.5 revolutions. He just hooked him with that one horn, you know.
Yeah, Crooked Nose, he only had one horn, Jimbo.
Mm-hmm.
And a crooked nose, too.
Yeah.
Best I remember. And the crazy thing about it is, I'd see him quite a few different rodeos growing up. They'd have the Wrangler bullfights in Dodge City. They even had them right here in Pawhuska, too.
Yep.
And they'd walk around in the pen with him and feed him, It's the craziest thing I'd ever seen. But he was a mean, mean booger. Do you know how he lost his horn?
No, I heard on the clown barrel, but I don't know that was. Do you know how?
No, sir.
No. And what was funny about him was those bullfighters finally learned. Everybody tried to go to the muley side, and that was not the way to fight him. You had to go to the horn side because he could take and run and take that horn. And you'd think you'd get by that muley side, and that's how he'd pick them up, and he'd just sling them a lot of times out of there. Yeah, he was I've got a picture and big poster of Crooked Nose at my house. That he's a famous bull.
Yeah, I had one growing up, and I got another one here a while back, Jimbo. Same one hanging on my wall when I was in, I don't even remember what grade.
You was
Not very old.
You was talking about feet in the barrel. Have you seen that video? You might have even been there. I forget. It was at the finals when the bull was bucking so high. He had already bucked the guy off, but he was still, I think, and he was still bucking. But he landed a hind foot in the barrel with the guy. The clown was in the barrel. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I felt it before.
Yeah.
I had that happen in Mesquite one night.
Wow.
And the bull just happened. It'd been muddy outside the arena. Of course, it was a covered arena. And this bull bucked by there and stuck on. And it took my hat off and hit me right on the shoulder and just tore my shirt and went down, but just missed me. But
it hurt that clown that I'm talking about.
Yeah, it can. I mean, there's some people get broken necks in there, and the bad part about it is you're confined. You can't get out the bottom end of that thing. And
yeah, when I was growing up, I'd look in the bottom of them, Jimbo, and they're round, but it seemed like they all just had a little square at the bottom. I don't know if you could fit out the bottom or not.
No, you couldn't. You could pick it up and walk it. And they made a walking barrel out of it to where you could walk it. That aluminum barrel of mine that I had, I could get it up over my knees so I could run with it. And so if a bull went to the back end, I could be there pretty quick, help my bullfighter out.
No.
The Purple People Eater was the
brother of Crooked Nose.
Right? He was the dad. It was Purple People Eater, and they bred him to a bunch of Mexican cows.
Okay.
And that was.
I used to haul those two bulls around together.
Yeah. He was there at Colorado Springs. Matter of fact, a friend of mine just passed away in Coral. And I had a picture of him, and I've lost some of my pictures, but Greg Doring had him drugged and fought him there at Colorado Springs.
Did those bulls buck too, or were they just
they were just fighting bulls. Yeah, they were hot.
Yeah, right.
They were hot.
They were bigger bulls too, the ones that Harry Vold hauled around for the Wrangler bullfights. It seemed like his bulls weren't the little Mexican fighting bulls. Most of them were some big, meaner bulls that.
Yeah, they was most of them 4-year-olds or so, and stuff, and yeah, they put on quite a show, and it was good watching whenever you went to Harry Vold and you had Crooked Nose and all those great bulls out.
Skipper Voss seemed like he always carried an inner tube around with him. Did he carry?
No, Skipper didn't.
That was Rex Dunn, maybe.
Rex Dunn did, Skipper, matter of fact, won the bullfight there at Colorado Springs that year, and him and I'd worked quite a few rodeos together. He's a great bullfighter. He's athletic and could really step around those bulls. And of course, he is in IPRA and then came to the PRCA, and he ended up being a Wrangler world champion bullfighter.
What was the Wrangler bullfights? Because they're not around anymore that I know of.
Jim Sutton and his wife Julie came up with the concept, and when they first started, it was 6 bullfighters, and you had, if you was a barrelman, you had 6 bulls out a night, and they judged not on protection, they just judged on how well you could fight them, and if you got hooked and you got run over, why they took points away from you. If you got on the fence, they took points away from you, and it was kind of controversial. It was one person's, it was a judge's opinion on who did the best job. I'm sure not everybody always agreed, but it was good watching. And of course, they had the Beauty and Beast contest at Oklahoma City and stuff. And Wrangler put up some good money for it, and they paid us real good as a barrelman. And I think I worked 5 or 6 of them.
What was the format? How did it go? I think the bullfighter got out. Did he place you where he wanted you to go as in a barrel man? Then he calls for the bull.
Yeah.
They turn him out. How long do they fight him?
60 seconds.
And then they had an option of going a bonus how many seconds?
Yeah, I think it was at that time, boy, that's been, this is back in 80 and 81, a long time ago. But I think at that time, they had to fight them for 45 seconds, and they could fight them up to like maybe 60 seconds or a little over a minute. But as a barrel man, just like there at Colorado Springs with all them young bulls and as hot as they was, it was isometrics in that barrel, just pushing, trying to stay in it. Because I mean, they would smoke it because they had never seen it and had never hit one before, and then some bullfighters would keep you back and then make a few passes, and some guys would want you in there close with your barrel so they could take some of the heat off of them bulls and wear them out just a little bit before they tried to go around them.
Some of them guys started doing some stunts with the barrel too.
Yes.
Would you know ahead of time that they were going to try to position? I don't know. There's several of them that I don't know. They put the bull just right in front of the barrel. Barrel's on its side. And they jump on the barrel and jump across the back of the bull, or it's Murph Horton. I don't know if he's the one that originated it, but he'd stand in front of the barrel standing up, and get the bull behind him, and he'd take a run and hit the barrel, and he'd just go off in front of the barrel.
Yeah, they call them a barrel hop.
A barrel hop, yeah.
They called it a barrel hop stuff. Usually when they laid the barrel down, there'd be 2 bullfighters. I've got pictures of when I worked at Las Vegas Eldorado days in 1982, and Skipper Voss holding the barrel for Rob Smets to jump, I think Joe T. Garcia, which was a real famous fighting bull that Mike Servey hired for a long time. He was a bad cat.
Well, heck, I forgot what I was going to say, Jimbo.
I'm going to ask you, you were hired to be a funny man. What was some of the stuff you did in your act?
Oh, I had a dog act at times. I had a Model T car that I did a little routine with it. I've had several different acts through the years, and everybody, of course, when I started, everybody had a mule or Shetland pony, and the first event of the rodeo was a clown mule race, and we'd race out after the grand entry. And of course, nowadays nobody hauls a mule or a pony anymore and stuff to do the stuff that we used to do. But we had a lot of fun. Boy, it was, I said, it was one of the best jobs. When I was teaching school at Caney, Kansas, and I said I had the best of everything, because whenever I got tired of teaching school and the kids got tired of me in the spring, well, it's time to go rodeoing. And about the time I got tired of traveling, it was time to go back to school. So it worked out really good.
Right. Slim Pickens, they said he had, my dad, little kid with Slim would bullfighting, and said that he had an old horse. I think it was an Appaloosa horse, maybe called Dear John or something. He'd come riding out on him, and he'd buck him off on cue somehow.
Yeah,
That was part of his act.
Buck LeGrand had a horse, Oklahoma Silver, that was unbelievable. Worked at Liberty, and we had mules that would do the old car routine and roll over on their back and walk on their hind legs and do stuff like that.
You never had any monkeys or dogs or anything?
Yeah, I've had monkeys. I've had dogs. I even had a trained goat. Everybody said, "What's his name?" I said, Killer. He said, Killer. I said, yeah. I said, he's killed all my wife's flowers. He's killed all the trees. And she says, if I don't get rid of him, she's going to kill him. But
what'd you have your monkey doing?
She pretty much just wearing clothes.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I took him to Calgary, and they wanted me to work this act on stage. Well, Calgary, 20,000 people there in 1970. And that little old monkey, I had a Reese monkey. And so this happened. They had the costumes from the Planet of the Apes there.
Yep.
And so I went over and talked them into loaning me one of those costumes from the Planet of the Apes. And I put the other clown in it, and we did the act with it instead of that little monkey, and stuff. And when the rodeo was over, I took that suit back, and I asked the little boy, I said, "Did I buy one of those?" And he said, "Oh, MGM Grand's got a bunch of them." He said, "I'm sure you can." He said, I said, "Well, what could I probably buy one for?" And he said, "Oh," he said, "I imagine 5,000 to buy one." Well, I'm a rodeo clown. I was thinking $50.
Right.
I was watching an old clip from Calgary Stampede the other day, and they had what appeared to be as a tame, gentle lion running around during the bull ride. Did you ever see that, Gary?
No, I did not.
Yeah, they had a halter on the lion, but wouldn't that make you want to just stay on your bull, not get bucked off?
Right.
Yeah, I guess one of the clowns up there used to haul a lion around, and he'd be in the arena during the bull riding during the Calgary Stampede.
There's some of those guys that used to have a bear, a trained bear and stuff. I never did see that act either and stuff. And then L.V. Sanders had a roller skating horse that did like 20 tricks on roller skates. And that was, in fact, he lived with Buck LeGrand for a while. And, but yeah, if LV could train, he was quite a trainer.
I'd think that lion would make a bull duck out from under you. I wouldn't want him out there when I was trying to ride.
Well, if I'm lying, I'm dying. They had a lion out there. I'm not even kidding you. I'm not even kidding you, Jimbo. During the Calgary Stampede, during the rodeo.
Wow.
What year would that have been? You have any idea?
It was in color.
Yeah, it was in color. Okay.
That's all I can tell you. It was in color. The clip I saw.
Who was the clown, Gary? And this isn't funny at all, but they had the shotgun. They always shot the shotgun off, and somehow got some live load in his gun. He shot into the crowd and hurt some people.
I believe it was Ken Bourne is the story that I heard. And Ken Bourne was the guy that I think that happened to. And
I've always heard that story.
Yeah, and there's been some clowns killed in clown acts before. There's some of them with a disappearing act and just I've got black powder burns on my hands and stuff in places I don't even want to tell you about that and flash bombs and stuff going off that wasn't supposed to go off and stuff.
I kind of miss that clown act at the rodeo. Like I say, they just don't do it like they used to,
Do they not, Gary? Are they not hauling around a clown car or anything like that now?
No, I'll tell you what, we've got so many events now,
don't have time for
that they don't have the time for it. And I mean, and it's sad because, when the PBR started, they didn't want a barrelman to say anything because they was all athletes and they wanted all the attention on the bull riders, which I agree. They're great athletes and stuff, but there's enough people in those grandstands, children and stuff, and there's enough lulls in a rodeo. You need something to fill those lulls in. And Roach Heaton, Tuff's brother, one time at the Lazy E, he said, "Gary, would you like to work the barrel at one of these one of these PBRs?" And I said, "If they're not going to let me say anything and do anything," I said, "I want to get me a remote control barrel, and we can put it out in the arena, and I can sit up here in the cantina and just move it wherever they wanted at, And then they found out that after a few years they needed some calmed in, and of course Flint Rasmussen. Then they got him, and and he's kind of a hype man, and I wouldn't call him a barrel man, but he is an entertainer and one of the best that's ever been. So
Right.
I saw him when he was actually doing rodeos before the PBR hired him exclusively.
He's getting ready to retire, isn't he?
Is he?
I think I saw
yeah,
that.
I read that the other day that he is fixing to retire. Yeah,
They'll miss him because he's a large part of that. People.
God, he's so good still.
Yeah,
I've never seen anything like it. He's a very energetic fella.
yes, and his brother's is an announcer that was up for announcer of the year too this year. I can't think of his first name now, but Will Rasmussen. He's a real good announcer. Yeah, that's Flint's brother.
Wow. What was it like working the finals? You worked the national finals.
Oh, it was a goal, and it was one of the greatest things. It was, it was accomplishment to get there, and it was. You had to work 45 performances to even put your name in for the national finals. And of course, me teaching school, it's kind of tough to work 45 performances and just not go to any wintertime rodeos, And so 1974 was the first year I could put my name in for the finals. George Doak told me, he said, George was a real good and worked the finals a bunch. He said, put your name in. I said, there ain't nobody knows who I am because I said, I don't get to go to Denver or any of them big rodeos in the wintertime, And so put it in. I ended up the alternate to John Taylor that year. And then the next year, I was alternate in 75, and Bunky Boger went. And then in 76, the top 20, in 1974 was the first year that the top 20 bull riders got to pick the bullfighters and the barrelmen for the final. So I felt really good about that the top 20 bull riders had that much faith in me, because I always tried to put that barrel where it was in a position for the bull rider in case he needed to get behind it or by it, and for my bullfighters, to make sure that they had some place too. And you kind of use it like a tree out in the middle of the pasture.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great experience, and we had a 5-year rule back then that once you worked it, you couldn't work it again for 5 years, and so. But I'm real proud of working it the time that I worked it, and worked with two great bullfighters, Johnny Tatum and Bob Romer, and both of them are deceased now.
The bull dancer.
Yeah, and actually, I've got a picture where I'm fighting bulls at the Block and Bridle Arena in Stillwater, and Bob Romer's in the barrel. And then I've got a picture from the NFR with me in the barrel and him fighting bulls. I tell everybody I got a better education than he did. But yeah, he's a great guy, and we had a lot of fun together.
What would Bob used to do with his hat when he'd throw it at a bull? Would it come back to him, or would he just throw it to get their attention?
Well,
I wasn't sure. I seen a lot of
it depends. There's an old act we had that you could throw your hat out and it'd come back to you, but a lot of times you can use your hat. I've got one picture where this bull just right on my tail like this, and it looks like I'm probably going to get freight trained. And I'd learned some tricks through the years, I took my hat off and I just reached back and tapped him with it, dropped it, and he just got on it with both front feet, and just mashed that hat in the ground. The crowd loved it, and it gave me an extra couple steps because I never was blessed with a lot of speed. So,
who were some of the bull riders there at the finals? Do you remember that year?
Oh yeah, Donnie Gay and Randy Majors and Denny Flynn and the thing about was, of course, Donnie Gay won the 8 world championships and stuff, and so he was the guy pretty much every year to beat in that era back there in the 70s and stuff like that. But Sandy Kirby was in there, Butch Kirby. Bobby Berger was made to finals a whole bunch. There's a bunch I'm leaving out too. Jerome Robinson, Jerome's passed away now, but he was always in the mix of the deal. Some of the boys from California, George Paul, he wasn't there when I was there, but he was probably one of the greatest bull riders.
What made Donnie Gay so tough?
Pressure. I'll tell you what, Donnie had the confidence, and riding bulls, it's all about having it up here. Mm-hmm. And he had the confidence, and he could when the pressure got going. And in 1979, I was working Salt Lake City, and the best back-to-back two bull rides I ever saw. Doug Brown from Oregon was 92 points, and Donnie Gay was the last bull rider out, and he was 94 points. And Donnie signed a copy of a photo of that ride and gave it to my kids and stuff. But he rode so good under pressure and stuff that he just hard to throw off, And he rode with so much style. I mean, he didn't flop around on him. He rode really good.
Were you friends with most of the bull riders? I mean, is there kind of a...
Yeah, I was friends with them. The big thing was when I got to a rodeo, usually, I mean, I'd taught school maybe and drove all night to get some of them. And when I got there, I had to, get all the acts, talk to the announcer and tell him what I was fixing to do and do all that stuff. So you didn't have a lot of time. And of course, back then, as soon as the rodeo was over, a lot of them was gone. But one year after the Coffeyville Rodeo, I had a place at Tyro, Kansas, and a bunch of the Cowboys come by and spent the night at my house, and we all got to laughing because everybody had been to the NFR that was at my house except Donnie Gay's pilot, and Bobby Brown, Hooter Brown, he was there. Hawkeye, and Jack Ward, 2 times world champion, T.J. Walters, who many times had bareback riding, and John Edwards, and see who else. Jack Ward, yeah, and TJ, and there's a few more of them that was in there, but we all got to laughing because everybody had been to the NFR as a competitor or world champion except Donnie's pilot.
As a bull, watching a lot of bull riding, being a barrel man, would you tell what all the bull riders were doing wrong when they were riding that caused them to either do good or get bucked off? Did you become an expert by watching so much of it?
I couldn't tell you that I was an expert, but yeah, the first thing that you really watch for is anytime a bull rider looks off. When he loses focus and he looks off at the ground, you can just about bet that that's where he's going to land. And when their hips get over into their hand too, and if you stop and think, if a guy's riding right-handed, if he gets into his hand, the only thing to get him back is his left leg over here, or he's got to make a move to get back, because you get into your hand, and away from your hand, if you're stout, you can pull yourself back up. You get into it. And Wasey Cathy, he went to the finals a lot of times too, there back in those days, and he could get into his hand and get back better than anybody I ever seen. The next jump, he'd be sitting and you're going, how did he do that? This Sage Kimsey right now, and I was talking to Gary LeFew one day, and I said, I'm not a bull rider, but I said, for me, Sage Kimsey right now rides bulls so correct. And Gary LeFew, who's put on schools for years and years, and he said, you're exactly right. He said, so many people override bulls. They try to make too many moves. And if they ever get their arm, their free hand behind them, it shifts your hips over into your hand. And when it does, there's no way usually to get back. But, I was really fortunate. I mean, some of the greatest bull rides. Matter of fact, I was working the barrel when John Quintana rode a V61, first time he had ever been ridden. I was at Deadwood the year that John Quintana rode Booger Red, the first time that he'd been ridden at a PRCA show, I think. I heard later that he'd been maybe when he was amateur. But the year I worked the national finals, Donnie Gay was 95 points on Red 1 of Kessler's. And that record stood for 25 years before anybody ever broke Donnie Gay's record from 1976. And of course, 1976, the year that I worked, it was the year that Chris Ledoux won the bareback riding. It was a sudden death deal that year, and Chris Ledoux won the bareback riding that year too. So, but I have seen some great bull riders, and Denny Flynn comes to mind. He's one of the best that never won a world championship, and Ronnie Bowman from down at Clare, Oklahoma, and Jerry Bigley, Randy Majors, boy, there's a bunch of those. Jerome Robinson. There's a bunch of those guys that rode really good.
That was a good era of bull riding.
It was. It really was.
You mentioned George Paul. Was he from Del Rio, Texas, I guess?
Yes, he
where
was.
they have that big bull riding. I've always wondered. And I used to know a bunch of guys used to go down to that bull ride. They weren't bull riders, but they go down and have fun. It's in Del Rio, and it's just a big old party type thing they had. But I'm just wondering, do you think that was the template for what the PBR or the bull riders only became? Because it was like the San Angelo Roping Fiesta, the Ben Johnson. You had to be invited. You had to be the best in the world. I can't think of any other jackpot bull ridings that had that kind of format, away from an actual rodeo at the time. Do you think that might have been the template for the big time bull ridings like we see now?
Yes, I think it really was part of it. And that George Paul, I forget what he rode, 89 bulls in a row, I think, before he got killed in that plane crash. And I got to know him. I met him at Sydney, Iowa and stuff. And if you ever saw him without a shirt on, it was unbelievable because his riding arm was just way bigger than his other arm was and stuff. But he rode bareback horses too. But yeah, I do think what you're saying is exactly right. And of course, Tough was there, and Cody Lambert and the people that pretty much started the PBR. Matter of fact, I was working in Bonifay, Florida, and at the hotel in 1989. Cody Lambert introduced me to Ty Murray, and the rest of his history. Ty Murray, he'd set so many records, and that boy was an all around hand, like.
What bull riding it was, Jimbo. You've seen the movie 8 Seconds about Lane Frost, the one where his private areas are holding on by a thread. It's that bull riding where he gets back on. I think maybe wins the next round or something. So that's the big bull riding that we're talking about down there.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. It's the PBR. It's amazing that those guys had the foresight and started that. Matter of fact, they sent me a letter wanting me to invest in it. And of course, now I wished I had. Of course, afterwards, as always. But about that time, I was in the insurance business, and the company I was with just got through telling us that was all going to be terminated because they was getting out of personal lines and stuff. But they, $1,000 would have got me, in the original deal. And I was working for Gary Giss, the buckle maker, during the finals. I'd go help run his booths at the national finals and stuff. But yeah, the PBR has really came a long ways, and it's done a lot for rodeo and for everything.
What about the bulls? I mean, they're just about to breed them up to where they're almost unrideable.
They are. I'll tell you what, it's unbelievable, the bull power that we have now. And used to, whenever I was going and stuff, everybody had one or two really ranked bulls and stuff but now there's bunches of ranked bulls out there.
We did a podcast with Matt Austin here a while back, and he said they need, instead of breeding better bulls, they need to start breeding better cowboys.
Well, it's exactly, and this new PBR front where it's a team concept and stuff, and I haven't got to watch a lot of it, but with the money now that's in rodeo, can you believe that Stetson Wright? I mean, I'm a Stetson Wright fan too, but to win almost $1 million competing in a year, he won $960,000, I think it was. And that's amazing. I mean, we'll laugh. The year I worked the national finals, it took half of my check just to check out the Holiday Inn in Oklahoma City, And now it's free motel rooms. And I'm glad. I'm happy that the sport has came that. I'm not, but there's a lot of the old timers that kind of paved the road for it to get to where it's at today.
Yeah, you can say that about any event, pretty much.
Any sport, they're
any sport.
football. They used to wear leather helmets.
Yeah, NFL players used to have a winter or a summer job. A lot of them were car salesmen, insurance salesmen, and did things in the summertime.
Bouncers.
Yeah, everything.
That's I'm glad to see it. It's coming this way for the Cowboy, and you know what? The Cowboys have taken notice for the most part. There's a lot more business-minded businessmen. They pay a lot more attention to their physical health than most Cowboys. I don't think the beer stand's near as popular as it used to be. Possibly, there's a lot of guys specializing in an event where they enter several events because there's just so much money to be had. It's turned into a serious business. And the sponsorships, I feel like, turn into a serious business also, you know.
It really has. And the bareback riding, I mean, a lot of those bareback riders have been wrestlers and came from sports
athletes.
like that,
Yeah.
very athletic people. And some of the saddle bronc riders and stuff the same way, and some of the bull riders and the bulldog and all the events now is, but the money's there now where you don't have to. If you can focus and be good enough,
and make the finals.
Yeah,
You got to make the finals.
You got to make the finals, make any money,
Right.
just about. But there's some of these jackpots nowadays in this team roping. It's unbelievable what these boys are winning.
Well, bull riding, I feel like there's a lot of jackpots. There's a lot of, I'm going to say, amateur bull riding associations, away from the PBR and the PRCA. And there's quite a bit of money up for grab at some of those, it seems to be.
Yes.
I'm just glad to see that Cowboy can finally pay his bills if he's good enough to win anything. Because I've known a lot of Cowboys in the past who were the best in the world and still had trouble paying their
World
bills.
champions.
So,
Yeah.
Well, then Ben Johnson, didn't he say one time with the year he won the world?
Yeah.
He had a mad wife,
Wore out car. And
wore out card.
$3.
Yeah.
and $3,
Yeah.
yeah.
Some of this money trickled down to the clowns, the bullfighters and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. It's been, of course, I've been out of it for long enough, but I was on the Ponca City Rodeo Committee for 19 years and helped put that rodeo on and got to hire some of the people and stuff and it has, some of it's trickled down. The worst problem is, I think, the contract acts. There's getting to be so many events now with the girls breakaway, and which it's an exciting event and stuff, but they're taking it away from some of the contract acts, and but, yeah.
We got one of the most famous contract acts ever from right here in Osage County, not including Buck LeGrand with his trick mule and trick horses and everything that he hauled around, but I'm talking, of course, about the one-armed bandit. The most unique rodeo act I think's ever came down. Like,
yeah, a lot of imitators, but only one-armed bandit.
And John, I'm a John Payne fan. His whole family. I mean, Amanda and Lynn. When Lynn was going down the road,
his grandson's picking up the business too now.
Yeah, and I met John in Bonifay, Florida, in 1989. And of course, being from Shidler, and here I'm from Morrison, but we really didn't know each other. And that's where I met him. I was working that rodeo down there in 89 and stuff. But now, yeah, and what John's put together, I mean, a lot of us guys that had acts was just dreaming. But what he has done, and he put the work into it, and he keeps perfecting it and stuff. And it's amazing. And there's another actor right now in the PRCA. It's Bobby Kerr. I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff that he's done on these Mustang makeovers and stuff, and Horse Trainer Deluxe, and I don't know him personally.
He kept driving in the arena at Fort Worth the other day with a horse sitting down in a car in the passenger seat, Jimbo.
People don't realize, but sitting down is something a horse does not normally do. That is one of the hardest things they tell me to teach a horse to do, is to sit down. A lot of them will lay down and then sit up. But you stop and think about it. Just have one. Buck LeGrand's old horse, Oklahoma Silver, he would sit down and stuff like that. But there's some of this stuff that they're training them to do now is just marvelous.
I had a bulldogging horse one time. I think every time I started back him in the box, he would naturally sit down and do all kinds. He'd rear up too as he sat down, Jimbo. This was.
He knew you wasn't much of a bulldogger, probably.
Jerome Robinson. He was quite the bull rider back in his day, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah. Jerome was a businessman too. He had a business head on his shoulders. Nice guy, and of course he ended up being a stock contractor and stuff too. And then he got in with the PBR and stuff. And it was sad whenever he passed away, because I'm sure the PBR misses him and a bunch of his fans.
I believe it. We met him down there. He went in the same time my grandpa did. And just a few months after he did, and he just looked like a picture of health then.
Yeah, I used to work for him, Jimbo, back in the day. He'd rent the Kansas Coliseum out there in Wichita, and he'd hire all us boys from driving distance that knew anything about a rodeo. And We went in there and we had to we had to break up the ice ring ice. Well, help them roll in with the arena dirt and then set up the arena. And as soon as the last perf was over, we started taking it all down right then. Jimbo worked till daylight every time. Every year he had it over there.
At the Coliseum, we had the circuit finals there, the Prairie Circuit Finals there in 1978. And John Macbeth hired me to work it, and we on Saturday night it was sold out. And that was, of course, it was brand new back in those days at Kansas Coliseum, and we had the circuit finals there about 4 years in a row.
I think it's condemned now. Last time I drove by it there on 935.
Well, that's how old I am. Yeah.
Yeah, it had a big old chain link fence around it, and the weeds had grown up through the parking lot. So I think there's another new one just down the road from it.
Yeah, I know you probably had a lot of injuries. Did you ever have any real serious injuries?
You know, I'd laugh and tell everybody I got my heart broken one time at Rodeo in South Dakota, and my nose broke in a bar in Montana. But outside of that, I did get knocked out at Manawa, Wisconsin. I was fighting bulls that day, and a boy hung up to a bull called Bicentennial, and it was the bicentennial year, and got me under the eye with a horn when he reversed his spin, and I got 4 pictures of it. Of first thing you do on a hang up like that, you try to get on a spinning bull, get the bull straightened out, and this kid had lost his feet and was really going to get hurt bad, and I got him straightened out, and I went for the tail of the rope. When he did, he reversed it and caught me under the eye with a horn, and I woke up in a hospital about 15 miles away, and I said, "Doc, how bad is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's not too bad." He said, "I've done plastic surgery on you." And I said, "You think my cheekbone's broke?" And he's going, "Oh, no." He said, I can see your cheekbone good." He said, "Is it?" It wasn't broken. Yeah, it was kind of, I said, "How many stitches?" He said, "I don't know. I've been sewing for a while." And I had the stitches taken out down at Stillwater. I was going to working on my master's, and this old doctor took the stitches out. He said, "I don't know who sewed you up, but he is a young doctor." I said, "How can you tell that?" And he said, "They took little bitty stitches." He said, "That thing's not going to scar." And after a few years, it did. It just kind of, you can't even tell it.
Went to school at Stillwater. I bet that was an experience too. A lot of fun times down there. A lot of Cowboys down there, wasn't there?
There was, there was a bunch of Cowboys down there at that time. Kelly Corbin, of course, he was down there at that time, and the world champion. And there's a lot of Cowboys come through there. Of course, Walt Garrison was going to school. I had a junior judging class with Walt and got to know him good.
What about Rusty Martin? Did you know him?
Yeah, I met Rusty and didn't know him when he was going to school there. I think he had left. See, I went to Tonkawa for 2 years, so I didn't get to Stillwater till I was a junior and stuff. And yeah, Rusty was a bulldogger and big stout guy and big rancher down around Dakota.
Oh yeah.
And somebody said you were, or maybe you said you were roommates with Tommy Wayman.
Yeah, Tommy Wayman and I roommated at Stillwater. He was a freshman. Of course, I was a junior. And I think we lived in 3 different places. I used to laugh and tell everybody, they said 3 different places. I said, "Yeah, I had to move every time the rent come due." I said.
I was wanting to ask you about the block and bridle rodeo down there, where the intramural rodeo. What was that all about?
There's a block and bridle put on that rodeo on that building, and they hired me to fight bulls at it, matter of fact. And they've been bucking cows down there because they didn't want them to. And they said, "We're not supposed to have any fighting bulls, in that building and stuff." And of course, Buck LeGrand told me, "Hey, you tell them not to hire you if they don't want their bulls fought, and stuff." So anyway, I worked at that rodeo there in that block and bridle in that little bitty building. Of course, had cement walls up, and that's where I put Bob Romer. And the picture, I've got a picture that was on the front page of the old Collie of me fighting bulls, had my hand on this bull's head, and it'd been there several times. But of course, that building's completely gone now and tore down. So.
Did they have that? Was that an annual event down there back then? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The block and bridle put on that rodeo, and one year they ended up. I worked it one year, and then the next year I had Tonkawa and it booked at the same time. that Tonkawa rodeo. They hired me there in '64, and I worked that rodeo 11 years in a row. And I had it booked the 12th year, and I didn't know it. They didn't tell me when they hired me, but it was an open rodeo, not a college. And I knew at that time the PRC had blacklisted me if I went to it. So I showed up and had to get somebody else to work the rodeo because I knew I'd get blacklisted if I worked it.
What was going on around that time that was causing the blacklist? I remember my dad talking about it. As if you had a pro card, you weren't allowed to go to.
Yeah, you wasn't allowed to go to open rodeos, amateur rodeos. And you could go to jackpots if I think at that time if there wasn't over 3 events, I think. And but then whenever they moved the PRC headquarters, the way I understand it, to Colorado Springs and stuff, the right to work law, they couldn't enforce that to keep you from going. And so then it kind of opened some doors for, like Pawnee, Oklahoma's got an IPRA rodeo, and they wanted me to come work the rodeo, and I worked it a couple of times. I think my son Shane, he clowned also. I think he worked it 5 or 6 different times, but yeah, from then on they couldn't really say, where you could go and where you couldn't go.
Did you ever get to work Cheyenne?
I brag and tell everybody I worked Cheyenne the first year I was in the PRC, and they say Cheyenne, Wyoming. I said, no, Cheyenne, Oklahoma. It's one performance every 5 years.
Yeah.
These little towns out there around there, they rotate that rodeo. It's a one performance deal. And 1 year it's in Hammond, and 1 year it's in Strong City, and those 4 little deals. But yeah, no, I never did work Cheyenne. They didn't hire a barrel man for a long time, and then I talked to him 1 year at Denver that we'd go to Denver to the PRCA convention in January and book our rodeos, And then when the PRCA moved the national finals to Las Vegas, they moved the convention to Las Vegas too. So from then on, we had to go to Vegas to book our rodeos and stuff. But no, I never did. I always wanted to, but I never did. Once Quail got it, and Quail was great, and he worked it several years in a row.
Right.
That was my hero growing up, Jimbo.
Really?
Well, Dobbs. I used to hang out with
be
him.
a clown. Your hero would be a clown.
Oh yeah, he still is. I guess my hero.
Yeah,
I don't see why not.
I've got a picture of him, and I'm in the barrel, and him and Buckler Grand are fighting bulls at Burwell one year. I worked Burwell, I think 4 or 5 years in a row, and yeah, Quail was good. He had good acts, and he is, him and Leon Coffey are the only 2 to ever work the NFR as a bullfighter and then a barrel man. Buckler Grand was the only person to ever work it as a barrel man, then a bullfighter. So that was the difference.
It's just a natural progression. As you get older, you go to the barrel, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was odd for Uncle Grant to go from the barrel to the bullfighter.
Yeah, it was real odd for him to go.
Yeah.
I was really fortunate in my time. I got to work with every one of the greatest bullfighters and stuff. The George Dokes, the Junior Meeks, the Quail Dobbs, the Wick Peth, Skipper Voss, Miles Hare, Rick Chapman, David Burnham, all of them worked the NFR and stuff. Rex Dunn worked a bunch with Rex.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot then. If you were making a Mount Rushmore of clowns, rodeo clowns, who would you put on it? Need 4 names.
Whoa, I'll tell you what, that would be tough. That would be really tough to do.
We didn't say this podcast is going to be easy to
No.
Are you going to combine clowns and bullfighters?
Yeah, just clowns, just rodeo, because that's what they used to be. They used to be rodeo clowns,
That was just the name.
Yeah, that was just the name, and just combine them. And they don't have to be any that you saw, just the ones that had the most influence, or just you think belong on that Mount Rushmore.
Well, I'll tell you what, that is a great question, and of course, Buckler Grand comes to mind. And it depends on what category, like you're saying, what category, if you just lump it all together and stuff. I mean, Big Jerry Olson from South Dakota, I'll tell you what, he's one of my heroes, had a buffalo and gave me a lot of encouragement. George Doak, there's Chuck Henson, one of the funniest guys to ever put makeup on. Rick Young. If you ask Rick Young who's the funniest, he'd say Chuck Henson. If you ask Chuck, he'd say, and get to work with those 2 guys like at Salt Lake City, 9 performance and stuff we had more fun. I couldn't believe that they was going to pay me when the rodeo was over because I had a lot of fun and working those rodeos together, So uh, I'd have to think about that before I just stuck my foot in my mouth.
Slim Pickens, what about him? He could be on there.
Slim Pickens, of course, he was before my time. I mean, I'm old, but I'm not quite that old. But yeah, Slim Pickens, of course, I mean, fan favorites and stuff. Wilbur Plogger, a lot of people, Wilbur Plogger was one of the best. Jimmy Schumacher, as far as I was concerned, when I started, I thought he was the best barrel man.
What about Ted Kimsey?
Ted, he's a good barrel man, and he fought bulls some too.
He had a great act too.
I remember speaking of Wilbur Plyer when I was a kid, bulldog too.
Oh yeah,
And he back in the box with his clown outfit on. He'd come out there baggy pants and striped shirt and bulldog steer.
Who's the fella just passed away a year or two ago? He was, I think he's from down around Poto. I don't remember.
You mean the barrel man?
Yes, sir. Pretty famous one.
Yeah,
He'd been around a while.
Frank Rhodes.
I don't think he was from around Poto, but I can't remember his name for the life of me for some reason.
Frank Rhodes was and he worked at NFR as a barrel man, and he was from Valiant down in that area, and I'm trying to, the Clark brothers, Bobby and Gene Clark, I never did get to work with them because they didn't used to have a barrel man, and they had really great acts and stuff. They had a Cannon act, a disappearing act. I never did get to see it, but everybody just marveled at it and stuff,
Flint Rasmussen. It'd be hard to leave off of there.
Yeah, that's that. It would be tough, and you kind of got to put it in categories of but yeah, there's Buddy Heaton. I mean, the stories I've heard about him and stuff. Of course, he's before my time too, But a big Jerry Olson. I mean, he was so, he made the national finals in the bulldogging and stuff, but he could grab a bull by the tail, and he was so big and stout, he could pull down on it, and they couldn't kick him, and he'd grab him by the tail and then get a hold of the horn and laugh at him. I mean, he was, I don't know if you ever saw him do that or not. And Corco's had a bull called Snuffy, and I mean, a bad fighting bull, but they said when he was a 3-year-old that Jerry Olson held onto his tail and his horn, wore him out, and then bulldogged him. But yeah.
What was the meanest bulls you ever? What's the top 3 meanest?
Well, and again, Hellcat was a bad cat that he's a muley that he knocked everybody in the business down. And the story goes that if he ever got you down, if you laid still, that he'd leave you. But he got me down one time, but my feet wouldn't lay still. I'm always trying to get up, but probably Buster. The worst bull probably that Hoss Inman had Speedy Gonzalez Jr. And he was a yellow bull, had one horn that come down, big horns like this. And he would take, and Hoss Inman would make you have an inner tube, a tractor inner tube, and a dummy. And you'd have to patch that inner tube about every night. He'd go out there and hold that inner tube down and poke a hole in it with his horn. And I've seen him take and just tear dummies completely up, just get them down and hold them down with the front foot and just and tear them up and stuff. And he was probably Jimmy Schumacher. He finally got where he told Hoss Inman and said, "I will not get in the barrel when you turn him out." He said, and he was. It's lucky he didn't kill somebody. Schumacher told the story, and I know you may think I'm exaggerating, but I saw this happen. But he'd hook a dummy and throw it in the air and then catch it on his head when he come down and cocked his one horn up. And Schumacher tells the story about him. The dummy, Jimmy had just got out of the barrel, and be funny, went over to the dummy and he like his pickpocket, and he checked the pockets, of course they're empty and stuff, but them white pockets was out. And they turned that bull out afterwards, and he hooked that bull and stuff and got him down and started to run off, and he went back and hooked the pockets out of that dummy.
That was Speedy Gonzalez Jr.
Speedy Jr., yeah. Jr. But then he had a bull called Speedy too. He was a mule, had horns cut off like this, but he would ungodly fast. I saw Buck LeGrand turning back so fast the bull lost his footing and rolled over and jumped up and was back on him again. And Porco's had a bull called Chico that had his horns cut off, pretty good size, and they only stuck out about like this. But I told Tom LeGrand at Mobridge one year, I said, hey, this son of a gun's looking for the big end of that barrel, and it's the bullfighter's job to keep that big end turned away from him, And the next performance he's out, he hooked the barrel, and he got the rim of my barrel, those horns stuck over it, but he didn't get his nose in. If he'd have came straight in, but he picked the barrel up with me on and carried it around for it seemed like 5 minutes, but I'm sure Irv Corco got the biggest kick out of it. He's a Parli. I said, I'm going to make you famous. I told him, yeah, if I live,
Yeah.
What was your favorite rodeo to work?
Oh, of course, the national finals has got to be right up there. And then that was, but I love Deadwood, South Dakota. I think they said I worked it as many times as anybody ever had to act. And they've got a museum up there. And when they opened their Deadwood Museum, they called me. Well, they wanted my clown barrel, but my son was using it, so I couldn't donate it to them. And so I went up there for their grand opening. And I go back to Deadwood a whole bunch. Salt Lake City was definitely one of the good rodeos that I worked. And I worked a lot here in Oklahoma. I mean, Claremore, Oklahoma, great rodeo. Ponca City, I worked Ponca City a bunch. I saw on Facebook where they're getting brand new bleachers right now, which is great. And when I was on the committee, why we replaced them old boards on them. I was scared to death them things would fall down sometime, but I saw they're getting new bleachers, and they've got some new young members on there that are doing some good things. And Hugo, Oklahoma, Freckles hired me 4 years in a row when I first started to work Hugo. And there's a lot of rodeos. Woodward, Oklahoma was one of my favorites. I worked it 4 years in a row. They're back in the early 80s and stuff. Bonifay, Florida.
Oh, yeah. That Ponca City, the 101, I guess that's where contract acts originated, right in that area, dang near.
Yeah, Clark Schultz. I don't know if you ever heard of Clark Schultz or not, but he had the old Model T car act that actually, the one that I've got, Clark Schultz sold the original to Jack Lynn, and then he ended up buying it back, and they took it to Six Flags over Texas, and then Jack Lynn built the Model T that I've got now, but Clark Schultz had rodeo acts way back there in the 40s and stuff, the One Arm Bandit, that's where he really got started, was there at Ponca City, Oklahoma with a truck, and we all know the story, and Osbalds and them hired him to work that run for Walt Osbald. And
and it goes all the way back to the Miller Brothers even.
Oh, yeah.
That was just a big Wild West show, but they had a lot of what I would call contract acts today between trick ropers and trick riders and
and
everything.
Actually, it's called the 101 Wild West, not the 101, the ranch and stuff. But reading a book about the Miller Brothers and the 101 Wild West and that whole ranch and deal, a friend of mine sent me that book, Wild West, I believe is the name of it. It's about 3 inches thick, but it's all about the Miller Brothers.
Yeah, unbelievable history over there. They had steer opens over there, and back in the day, big old steers. You see those old black and white film. They're not very good quality, but
yeah, I saw a film of Bill Pickett tying a steer down over.
It's kind of funny that where Bill Pickett's buried there north of Marlin, Oklahoma. I own the land around that cemetery there. That's part of the old 101 ranch.
No kidding.
They sold it at auction one time, and I don't own the cemetery, of course, but I own the property around it, and I just bought it kind of because I just thought it was a neat deal that Bill Pickett and stuff's buried there, the Ponca City Rodeo, I worked it the first time in 1969, and the last time I think was either 98 or 99, and I think during that time. I worked it probably 10 times, but they had, Festus. They had Festus there as entertainers, and they had the stars there at the rodeo.
Well, we're sitting here in the Ben Johnson Museum. You said you ran across Ben Johnson a time or two in your life.
Yeah, Gary Gist, the buckle maker, knew Ben, and Ben come up to his skybox at the national finals one year, and he introduced me to him, and then in 1984 at the national finals was in the gold card room, and Freckles and Ben were getting their picture taken. Freckles hollered at me and said, "Gary, come get in this picture with us," and so I got my picture made with him, and then later on, Ben was in Oklahoma for the Ben Johnson deal at the Lazy E, and Ben saw me at the hotel and recognized me, and we visited for a long time. He was wanting a mule to ride on his ranch.
You couldn't get him one found. They didn't want to sell the one you had in mind.
No, they said they wouldn't. They couldn't let him go, But Ben Johnson, he was quite the actor, and I'm glad to see you guys carry on this tradition. And if anybody hadn't seen this museum, I sure encourage everybody to stop by and look at it. And every time I come by, I come in to see new stuff, and new pictures and new memorabilia. And so I think it's a great thing you're doing here.
Appreciate it. If someone wants to become a professional rodeo clown or bullfighter or barrel man, how do they do it nowadays?
There's some school. If they want to be a bullfighter, they need to go to a bullfighting school, and there's some real good ones. Rob Smets and Miles Hare put on a real good school. There's some of these boys down there now. I mean, Cody Webster and Nathan Harp and those boys, they work out. They've got their own place where they practice fighting bulls. If they want to definitely be a bullfighter, to get into the barrel man and stuff, number one, the hard part's getting hired, and you got to start out small and start out at some smaller rodeos and little rodeos and just work your way up and get somebody to. Every place is looking for new original acts, but they're really hard to come by, especially when you're competing against people like the One Armed Bandit and Bobby Kerr and those people that are trained animals. The thing about them is, like, I've had buffaloes that was trained. I had a little buffalo that we call it was a dwarf buffalo, but I don't think maybe it was. But we teach in school and only rodeo in summer. You got to work those trained acts every day. Keep them going. You can't lay off of them for 9 months and then go back and try to do it again.
Me and him got a common person in common, Jimbo. My uncle was part of his rodeo team that he was the coach of.
Yeah, Lewis Barnes. Lewis was a good bull rider, and that rodeo team was. I mean, Irvin Williams, who made the national finals in the bull riding, he was on that team. Wes Ward, who almost made it in the bareback riding. I think he broke his leg that year when he would have made it. Tyler Magnus, he won back-to-back go-arounds and at the finals. And Terry Posttrack, I don't know how many times he was the IPRA world champion. And Donnie Vitt and several of them that have been to the IPRA finals. Ron Gilbert was a great one. We had some girls too. Brenda Ropp from up in Kansas. You probably knew Brenda Ropp and her dad and stuff. Her dad was a calf rover, but
Glenn Ropp, her dad.
Yes,
yeah, I knew Glenn Ropp.
Yeah, he stops in every now and then.
Really?
Yeah. And Brenda, the first college rodeo she entered, she went all around that. She was running barrels and breakaway roping. But there's Lewis. Lewis, I think, was in the top 20 one year in the book.
I think he ended up 16th twice.
Yeah.
Broke his pelvis at Cheyenne one year, mid-ride. Won the first round, happened on the second one. And then he ended up 16th that year. And then the next year or the year after, he ended up 16th again in He broke his pelvis again, I think, riding this bull called Cowtown. It's a real famous bull back in the day.
Yeah.
Ended up 16th in the world 2 years in a row. And got crippled in July or August both years. So that'll happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's not if you get hurt, it's just when, So
he had his hands full over there with my uncle and Terry Post-Track and a handful of them there.
Yeah, that was an interesting experience.
Well, you'll have them every now and then.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
For sure. Well, Jimbo, you got anything else for him?
I'll just appreciate him driving over to us today and visiting with us. It's a great podcast. This is the first clown we've had, rodeo clown we've had.
I think so.
We've had bull riders and bronc riders and lots of steer ropers,
announcers,
and barrel racers.
Other contract acts.
I know it. Yeah. I don't think we've ever had a rodeo clown. That's quite a treat, really.
Well,
interesting.
I can say I was the first at something.
This is one of my favorite ones. I could talk rodeo clowns all day long.
I know you could.
For sure. I paid a lot of attention. You know who one of my favorites were? Leon Coffey. You mentioned him a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
When he was a bullfighter, Jimbo, I can guarantee you it was something to watch, something he revolutionized bullfighting. He, at the end of every rodeo, I think every stock contractor carried around a mean bull to end the rodeo with.
Mm-hmm.
The bullfighters, they'd get to show off a little bit their skills and give the crowd a little bit of excitement. And they started playing music for Leon, and he would dance in front of the bull, and then he would do the splits and then stand up just a little bit at a time from the splits. I mean, it was absolutely amazing what Leon Coffey could do. And now he's one of the funniest and best rodeo clowns out there, So, love rodeo. I love rodeo clowns, for sure.
I know.
Hey, what do you think about, I know we're trying to end this deal, but what about the events like this? We about killed a guy sponsoring him here a few years ago. This deal where they just made a circle out in the middle of the arena and just got random people from the audience to come down, and the last one to leave their circle, or sometimes they're sitting at a poker table, and the last one to leave their seat. What do you think about these events?
I think they're a good way to get a committee or a person sued. A lot of people don't have any concept. I mean, I've been to some places before, and I was at a deal at Sedalia, Missouri one night, and it was cement walls up, high, and these people had no idea. And I told them, I said, hey, y'all got to realize when they blow the whistle, that bull, that doesn't mean anything to that bull when this whole deal's over. If you're still standing out there, and they turned out a bad horn-looking bull, I said, you need to. The only place to go was back toward the bucking chutes, because you couldn't climb that cement wall and stuff. And
they're all drunk, Jimbo.
Yeah,
they wouldn't have signed up for it.
Yeah, and there was a couple of drunks come by there, and they kind of wanted me to kind of help them pick the people, and I just took their names and put it over in the trash can. They don't know how much
you saved them a lot.
I saved them a lot, but. I think it's crazy. I really do.
It's like a gladiator sport almost, just turning some lions out on some people.
Mm-hmm.
They, about one of the best ones I ever saw was down in McAllister at the prison rodeo. It was a professional rodeo, but they only had the pros do the timed events. Mm-hmm. And they have this event called Money the Hard Way, where they tie this little sack of money on a bull's horn. And the first one to get it off of the horn wins. That's the only rule. So you can about imagine what happened there.
I worked at Parchman, Mississippi prison rodeo one time, and they did that. They turned the bull out, and I guarantee you, I'd just soon have my money tied around that bull's horns, have it in any bank in the United States. They never did get it all. But matter of fact, this bull ended up paralyzing a clown a few weeks after that. And guys ended up in a wheelchair after that. But this was one bad black white face bull that was a hooky son of a gun. I went, yeah, it was.
After the bull got tired of fighting for a minute, there'd be 50, 100 inmates in the arena, Jimbo. So they'd corner him up and surround him. And then one of them get brave enough and go get it.
They had one out in McAllister when I was a little bitty kid. So this has been the early 60s that he could get it.
This went all the way through the 2000s.
He could get it, and they finally had to make him legislate him out of it where he couldn't do it because he did it so easy. I forget how he did it.
I think he just laid down and let the bull run over him, and he took it off. And if he got hurt, it was just a few days off in the infirmary on top of having a little extra money in his pocket.
Right.
So
I was scared to go to McAllister. I was afraid they'd keep me. I was so too close to home for me. Mississippi, I could probably maybe get back home from there, but I thought they might lock me up down there.
I knew some steer ropers that smuggled some alcoholic beverages in there one time. You got to mention their names, but
in Mississippi, I had a shotgun with 4 blanks in it, and I went out there in the middle of the rain and shot that shotgun off. You talk about all the guards coming out, and I got everybody's attention way more than I wanted to. But, yeah.
Were you ever involved? How many rodeos back in your day used to do like a parade? You'd have to ride your pony or donkey
every
through.
One of them, And of course, they'd want me to drive my old Model T in it, but it'd get too hot, and so a lot of times we'd haul it on a trailer and stuff. But yeah, I've been in way more parades than I ever cared to talk about. But you need them, and it's promotion for the rodeo, and I understand it, and I didn't mind doing it. A lot of clowns said, "Oh man, they wanted paid extra to do it," but I always felt like that I could help the rodeo if we could anything we could do to sell tickets, and I didn't mind working small rodeos. The thing about it is if you make a rodeo get better and bigger, and Pawnee years ago asked me, they said, "What can we do to really make our rodeo bigger and better?" And I said, "You got to, Pawnee's only about 2,500 people. You got to get everybody in town interested and involved in that rodeo. That's what makes Burwell, Nebraska, Sydney, Iowa, and those towns like that. I mean, they have 10,000 people, at those rodeos, those little towns. And I tell you what, Pawnee has done a great job of getting that whole community behind it. And of course, it's only about 15 miles from Morrison, or 12, I guess. And they put on a good little rodeo there and stuff. And then, of course, Ponca City and Woodward's got really big and stuff. And parades and
Claremore seems to be getting bigger and bigger.
Yes, and they are. Claremore is a real good rodeo, and the thing about rodeos are, and serving on a rodeo committee and stuff, you don't realize, but it costs so much to put on a rodeo that if you can't get the sponsors, to help with it, it's about impossible to sell enough tickets to make one work anymore. It just. And I've always said that if you had to pay every committee man that's on every rodeo committee what he makes at his normal job for the hours he puts in on that committee, we can't afford to even have one of them.
And you got to thank the committee man. They don't get thanked near as often as they probably should. Now that I'm a committee man on a rodeo, I understand what these committee men go through, and it's a lot. It's a lot. Thank you, all you committee men and women that put on these rodeos.
When you're a rodeo clown, you probably should never be on one, because you got to realize that you make one stock contractor happy, but you make all these others mad. And so sometimes but yeah, I enjoyed serving on it, and Ponca City Rodeo is a good rodeo, but of course I helped put on Tonkawa Rodeo. I was president of that Northern Ag Club my sophomore year, and we put on that rodeo up there. So
it's gotten pretty competitive to get these rodeos nowadays, Jimbo, I think.
Really?
Yeah, there's in the last 15, 20 years, there's been a lot of hand switch on some of the rodeos, different stock contractors taking them over from some of the original people that even started the rodeo. So
that's exactly right. And there's some of these stock contractors now that have got a lot of money that they've made outside of rodeo, of course, and they love the sport, and which is good. I mean, because the stock's better now. But you see, like San Antonio, I've been watching it on TV. I got a buddy that lives at Bernie, Texas, and I went down there a couple of years ago with him and went to the rodeo and stuff. But when you got 4 or 5 stock contractors, that's got their best stock, they're Corcos have always had good horses, and the Suttons, but then you just Frontier Rodeo now in Freedom, Oklahoma. They got some great stock, and they're just a bunch of good stock contractors.
For sure, there's more good animals now than I believe there's probably ever been. Like you said, I think they only had 1 or 2 good horses, 1 or 2 good bulls. It was a big drawing contest everywhere you went. Now seems to be a lot more of a riding contest. I think
Everything bucks now.
I think so. If you get to one of these big rodeos, chances are you're going to get one that you got a shot on at least.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it, like I heard the other day, what a guy bought 10 of another stock contractor's best horses and paid $1 million for 10 horses. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's, and look at what these roping horses and stuff are bringing now, these team roping horses and calf roping horses. And I heard of one the other day that a guy that I know and sold his calf horse for 150,000.
That must be an average one because they're bringing a lot more than that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and it's good. I'm glad to see it.
I am too.
It's about time the horse is worth what your rig is pulling him around.
Yeah, we see these big 11-quarter trailers and big trucks and stuff. And I mean, back when I was going, we had a camper on the back of our pickup. We felt really good about that,
Yeah, we were still staying in motels. We didn't have, any kind of living quarters, anything when I was coming up rodeo. And I don't think anybody had these living quarters trailers, actually, for a long time. So, but these guys got to feel a lot better when they get up in the morning after getting a good night's sleep and their nice air conditioned or heated
really
trailer.
When you stay at the rodeo grounds, I had a 11-quarter trailer there for a while. And when you stay at the rodeo grounds and stuff, you meet so many people. You meet, especially in my business, met a lot more of the committee people that's out there working on the arenas and stuff. And you made friendships and stuff. And I love going to national finals every year. We have a gold card reunion that's held at the Thomas Mack on Thursday. Sean Davis started it, and now Johnny Riley has kind of taken it over. This year is the first year that you got to be a gold card member to attend it, and you can bring one guest with you. And have a PRCA gold card, you had to have been a member for 20 years, and at one time you had to be 50 years old. And I was kidding the girls in the office one year. I said, I must have only 41 years old, and I've had one for 20 years, and stuff. And they ended up changing the rule. They did for 20 years. So when I went to Las Vegas that year to the convention, one of the gals in the office handed me my gold card and said, "Hey, they changed the rule, and here's your gold card." So real proud of that. And this Cowboy channel, I'll tell you what now, it's really great that we get to watch these good rodeos and
oh yeah, I remember when we used to have to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning before the NFR would even start. On ESPN2 sometimes.
Oh.
So
yeah, this Cowboy channel and what they're doing is, I think, is really helping rodeo out. But I'm so proud of the PRCA, and we still have a prayer, we still have the national anthem. It's family entertainment.
it's the best deal going.
Yep.
No doubt about it.
Sports deal.
It's making a lot of these cowboys and cowgirls household names. A lot of people are getting the exposure out there, and that's how they get that's how they get the money up.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Rucker was spurring his bareback horse out last night. It's just all over the internet. Every opinion. Oh, he didn't spur him, or he did spur him. And got cheated, or he didn't get cheated. He's the talk of the internet, Facebook right now.
Just like a college football game.
I know.
I like it.
Yep. He's good for the sport, Rucker, and he's his dad was riding bulls when I was going, and I'll guarantee you what now. Bobby Steiner could ride a bad one. Yeah. I'll never forget Burwell one year. He drew a bull that just spun right in the gate, and first jump out after he nodded, he just turned back and he's looking at the guys that pulled his rope, and he said, "I made it through that one, didn't I?" He's talking to him. Wow. Impressed. But yeah, and then Sid Steiner, his dad, of course, is world champion, and just great folks in rodeo.
Yeah. Bring in a lot of new fans, people like Rocker. I mean, you'll tell how many fans he's brought to rodeo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
You take Bobby Brown and Hawkeye Henson when they used to bail off those horses,
Yeah.
and just stick the landing, and it just amazed me. Always landed on my head, and if I ever got bucked off, it seemed like. But those guys can make it look so good. And it's
For sure. You do a little work with the Rodeo Historical Society?
yes, yeah. I've been on the ballot to be a director for them. Uh, and I go down there a lot and try to help them. And I told them, I said, even though I'm not a director, I'll help them any way I can. I'm a big fan of the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum and the inductions and stuff like that. I think we've got a lot of people that need to be in it. I was glad to see, Buck get in it, Buck LeGrand get in it, and that was kind of a goal of mine was to try to get him in the NF. In there, he worked 5 NFRs and stuff, and
Including the first one.
yeah, including the first one, but yeah, I enjoy going down there, and I got friends from South Dakota, and Tom Miller, and of course. John Macbeth, good friend of mine from up in Kansas, and stuff, and just see a lot of people that I don't get to see maybe at the national finals that don't always go out there every year. So,
Well, all right. I think that's about it.
Might be a wrap.
Well, everybody, be sure to like, subscribe, throw a comment on there for us.
Yeah, I try to respond to those comments. I might miss one. If I did, it's just accident. So we appreciate your input.
Lauren only lets me
Well, you
look at the
better off
Facebook.
if
I'm
you
not
don't
allowed to comment on
You
anything.
need to take your comment button away from you.
Well, thank you, Gary. We sure appreciate you coming in today.
well, we appreciate you. What do you all do?
Well, yes, sir. And be sure and everyone stop by the museum when you're in Pawhuska. You're going to love it.
For sure.
See y'all next week.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, Cowboys of the Osage.